What did Jesus mean when he said, "This generation will not pass"? Out of all the prophetic words Jesus spoke about the end times, one sentence in particular has puzzled many, and it is found in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." At first glance, it appears as though Jesus was saying that the people he was speaking to, his disciples, would personally witness his second coming and the end of the age. Yet, over 2,000 years have passed since that moment, and the fullness of the end-time events described in Matthew chapter 24 have not yet come to pass. So what did Jesus really mean? Was he mistaken? Absolutely not. Did his prophecy fail? Never. The issue lies not with the truth of Jesus' words, but with our understanding of what he meant. To accurately interpret prophecy, we must consider the surrounding context, cultural implications, and the full teaching of Scripture. In this sermon, we are going to dig deep into the meaning of this generation, explore the context of Matthew chapter 24, and see what Jesus was truly revealing, not only to his disciples, but to us and to the final generation. To understand Jesus' statement, we must first grasp the context in which he said it. In Matthew 24, also known as the Olivet Discourse, Jesus is speaking privately to his disciples about the signs of his return and the end of the age. The chapter begins with a startling prophecy. Matthew chapter 24, verse 2. "Do you see all these things?" he asked. "Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." This prompted the disciples to ask him three specific questions in verse 3. When will these things happen? What will be the sign of your coming? What will be the sign of the end of the age? These were not abstract or irrelevant questions. The disciples, like many in their day, were expecting a political Messiah to overthrow Rome. But Jesus redirected their expectations toward a far greater event, his triumphant return in power and glory at the end of the age. From that point, Jesus launches into a prophetic outline that includes wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, persecution, false prophets, increased wickedness, and the global preaching of the gospel. These birth pains would mark the beginning of the end. He then outlines specific signs in more detail. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, he speaks of the abomination of desolation. In verse 21, the great tribulation. In verse 29, cosmic disturbances. And finally, in verse 30, his glorious return in the clouds with power and great glory. Jesus paints a vivid picture of the end times, marked by global upheaval, persecution of believers, and unparalleled tribulation. This framework is key to understanding the full weight of his statement in verse 34. Jesus is not only giving warning, but outlining the timeline for redemptive history's final chapter. So when Jesus says in verse 34, "This generation will not pass away until all these things take place," we must ask, which generation is he talking about? Is it the generation of the disciples, or is it a future generation? This is where clarity is crucial and theological precision is necessary. A misreading of this verse has led many astray and caused doubts in the faith of some. It is important to recognize that the majority of the events Jesus describes in Matthew 24 did not occur during the lifetimes of the apostles. While the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 was a partial fulfillment of judgment, it was not the full scope of what Jesus foretold. The sun did not go dark, the stars did not fall, Jesus did not return on the clouds. Therefore, we cannot limit Jesus' words to just the first century context. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 21, Jesus describes a time of great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. This level of distress far exceeds the Roman invasion. It describes a time of trouble so severe that it will shake the entire earth. Jesus said that if those days were not cut short, no one would survive. This is not simply about the Roman siege of Jerusalem. It is a reference to a global tribulation unlike anything in history. This is the same great tribulation we see described in the book of Revelation, a period marked by unprecedented suffering, divine judgments, and the rise of the Antichrist. The language Jesus uses mirrors the apocalyptic tone of Revelation, pointing not to a past event, but to a climactic period in human history yet to come. This tribulation is not limited to one city or nation. It impacts the whole world, fulfilling God's final purposes before the return of His Son. What does this generation mean? The Greek word for generation is genia. It can mean several things depending on context. It can mean a race or group of people. It can refer to the entire human race in general. Most commonly, it refers to a group of people living at the same time, usually spanning about 20 to 40 years. Some have tried to argue that this generation referred to the Jews, meaning that the Jewish people would not pass away before all things were fulfilled. While it's true that Israel has a central role in the end times, and that the Jewish people will endure until the end. Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 35 to 36, that interpretation does not fully satisfy the context of Matthew 24. The most accurate and contextually sound interpretation is that this generation refers to the generation that sees all these things beginning to take place. In other words, Jesus is speaking to the future generation alive when the end-time signs start to unfold. That generation, the one that sees the beginning of the tribulation, will also witness its end. The signs won't drag out over centuries. Once they begin, they will be fulfilled swiftly within one generation. That's the point. Urgency. A generation caught up in the cascade of prophetic events will live to see them culminate. It will be fast, it will be intense, and it will be global. Judgment comes suddenly. So what does this mean for us today? If we are, in fact, living in the last days, and there are many signs that suggest we are, then we may very well be the generation Jesus spoke about. The rebirth of Israel in 1948, the rise of global governance, increased natural disasters, moral decay, wars and rumors of wars, and digital tracking technologies that mirror the level of control the Antichrist will have in Revelation, all align with the prophetic outline of the end times. Could it be that we are the final generation? That question should cause each of us to pause and examine the times we're living in. Are we not witnessing the very signs Jesus described as the beginning of sorrows, wars, and rumors of wars, earthquakes in various places, a global moral collapse where good is called evil and evil is celebrated as good? Are we not seeing a rise in deception, lawlessness, and hostility toward true biblical Christianity? The rebirth of Israel in 1948, the rise of digital currencies and global tracking systems,